Great show.
Thank
anything
you.
Anything else you want to say?
No, it's good to see you. Great interview with the president last night.
Happy anniversary! Come on, give me a 1
Happy
year.
anniversary what?
What
What
year
anniversary?
on the show. I've done the show for 1 year tonight.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Oh, thanks. I'm going to call Jill. I bet Jill is like, this is exactly what happens to me. Sean's wife is
excuse
beautiful.
me, you didn't wish me happy anniversary when I started my 23rd year. I mean, all right, you're 22 years behind.
Well, what's the 23rd anniversary? Like aluminum? Like, what's 23? Like,
yeah,
one is
obviously,
paper,
no,
right?
it's silver. 25, silver. 50 is gold.
I'm just teasing you. Am I going to see you Monday in New York, or am I going to come on your show or something?
I think so. Yeah, come on my show Monday. Love to have you on. We love having you on.
We're going to hang out on Monday. You had a great show tonight, Hannah.
All right. Have a great show. Great interview with the president. Congratulations.
Right, thanks so much. I'm Laura Ingraham, and this is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight. Just 1 week out from the all-important midterm elections, as Sean said, and President Trump taking aim at birthright citizenship. Tonight we're going to expose the whistle and blow the whistle on another shady part of this, birth tourism. Now, you don't want to miss this unbelievable story we're going to highlight tonight. It doesn't get nearly the coverage it should get. And as a second caravan now clashes with police at the Guatemala-Mexico border, the Guatemalan equivalent of our CIA chief is going to join us tonight to tell us what his services have discovered about who is actually behind the caravan organizing. Plus, the race to abolish free speech, a scourge once relegated to college campuses, is now essentially infiltrating every facet of political life. Tonight, we're going to show you how one phrase has been used repeatedly to silence Trump and his supporters. And as I said, it's our 1 year anniversary tonight. So make sure to stay for some of the highlights and lowlights. No, just highlights of some of our biggest interviews of the past year. But first, when birthright goes wrong, that's the focus of tonight's angle. From the second President Trump announced his plans to address birthright citizenship earlier today, the left freaked out. Now here's what the president told Axios.
We're the only country in the world where a person comes in, has a baby, and the baby is essentially a citizen of the United States for 85 years with all of those benefits. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And it has to end.
Have you talked about that with counsel?
Yeah, I have.
So where in the process?
It's in the process. It'll happen with an executive order.
An executive order. Now, predictably, Open Borders media types were quick to denounce the president and condemn his even raising the idea of ending birthright citizenship.
As if we needed it, there's more evidence that immigration remains the president's animating issue. His new proposal to end birthright citizenship.
He's talking about birthright citizenship, and I think he's done that just simply to inflame the issue.
I mean, this is the hardline immigration message. The fear of immigrants changing the way of life of Americans.
Really harkens back to some of the darkest chapters in America's history when in 1857, the Dred Scott decision.
Well, move over Encyclopedia Britannica. Well, look, this is the default behavior of all those afflicted with Trump derangement syndrome when they're faced with an inconvenient truth. They demonize the president and just dismiss out of hand the issue. Heaven forbid we actually present the American people with a factual, unbiased presentation of the issues. Now, first of all, President Trump had already committed to ending birthright citizenship during the campaign. So aside from his mentioning the drafting of an executive order, the pathway to fulfilling this promise, hardly a newsflash. And why is this an important issue in the first place for the president and so many of his supporters, and I would dare say Democrats as well? A lot of it goes to the money. Consider the number of children born to illegals each year. Back in 2010, the Center for Immigration Studies estimated that between 300,000 and 400,000 are born to illegal aliens in the United States annually. Now, that figure is bound to be a lot higher today, given the new research that the number of illegals in the U.S. is at least double what was originally thought, or about 22 million. So let's conservatively say that 400,000 children are born every year in the United States to illegal immigrants. Well, those are people that hardworking U.S. taxpayers have to educate and for whom they provide health care and, in many cases, food stamps, obviously infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera. CIS estimates that the annual cost to the U.S. taxpayers of children born to illegal aliens is a staggering $2.4 billion. You think our vets and our homeless and our inner city schools could use that money? Maybe we could even pay down some of the debt. Well, to burrow down a little further, a 2015 CIS report found 51% of immigrant-headed households used at least one federal program: cash, food, housing, or medical care, compared to only 30% of native households. And we aren't just talking, by the way, about folks on visa overstays or who cross the border illegally. Many of you would be stunned to know that there are entire industries, both here and abroad, that are now devoted to gaming the birthright citizenship system. It's called birth tourism, and it's become big business in the United States, attracting immigrants from China, Taiwan, Mexico, Russia, and Turkey. What they do is they purchase package deals where they can come to the U.S. as a visitor for a few months or several months and have their baby on American soil. For upwards of $50,000, these foreigners are guaranteed U.S. citizenship for their children. It's wild. And that furnishes them, of course, with preferential college treatment when the kids reach age 18. And they also can sponsor their parents for green cards on their 21st birthday. That's pretty nifty. Now, I'm sure this is what our founders intended when they were drafting the 14th Amendment, right? Now, contrary to what Obama and so many on the left are saying today, President Trump, by questioning this birthright citizenship, mantra, is provoking a conversation that I think is sorely needed in the country. So rather than just castigating the president or caricaturing his position, why not have a substantive debate on it? How we want to proceed with immigration in the United States seems like a worthy conversation to me to have, especially during the midterm election. And up until now, Trump is the only president who's been willing to have that debate. What are the Democrats afraid of here? And that's the angle. Joining me now with a reaction, Dr. John Eastman is a senior fellow at the Claremont Institute and constitutional law professor at Chapman University. And Andy McCarthy is a contributing editor at National Review and a Fox News contributor. John, I want to start with you because you wrote in the New York Times that birthright citizenship is not actually in the Constitution. So why does the left think it is?
Well, they've misunderstood one of the clauses in the Constitution. There's actually two requirements for automatic citizenship. You got to be born on U.S. soil, and you have to be subject to the jurisdiction. And they just read that last clause out of the Constitution as if it's not there, or as if it means the same thing as being physically present here. But for those that ratified, those that drafted that language, it meant subject to the complete jurisdiction, not subject to allegiance to any foreign power. And that's what mandates birthright citizenship. So the children of citizens, the children of lawful permanent residents, they're automatically citizens if they're born here. But the children of temporary visitors or people who overstay their visas, and certainly the children of people who are not even lawfully present in the United States at all, are not automatically citizens according to the Constitution. And President Trump's executive order just wants to get the Constitution right.
Well, Andy, the reaction today was just over the top, hyperbolic. Even Paul Ryan, we're going to play a little clip from this. Paul Ryan said this, I believe it was on a radio show. Let's listen.
You cannot end birthright citizenship with an executive order. We didn't like it when Obama tried changing immigration laws via executive action, and obviously as conservatives, we believe in the Constitution. As a conservative, I'm a believer in following the plain text of the Constitution, and I think in this case the 14th Amendment is pretty clear.
Andy McCarthy, Paul Ryan, outgoing Speaker of the House, not giving Trump any help there, but he said, we got to have congressional action. Is that true?
Well, I think they should have congressional action, Laura. As a practical matter, personally, I think this is a constitutional provision of the 14th Amendment where we're not only just dealing with the constitutional provision, it's also been codified by Congress. I think they've made pretty clear that they want to weigh in here, and that they feel like, and rightly so, that they are the supreme branch of the three in terms of defining citizenship. So I think there's a very good argument that Trump shouldn't do this by executive order. As a practical matter, I must tell you, I think the way the Supreme Court lines up, the only way they have a chance of succeeding on what I and my friend John Eastman think is the correct policy is by getting it done by statute rather than executive order. But when Ryan says that the Constitution's pretty clear, I don't know what Constitution he's reading, because as John just pointed out, there's a very strong interpretation of it that goes back to the people who actually defined it at the time that it was ratified, that runs 180 degrees different from the way that Ryan is interpreting it.
John Eastman, I want to go back to you on this. Again, I think people, and Andy talked about how this has been codified by Congress. I think he's talking about, again, we don't want to get into the weeds on the law, people's eyes will glaze over, but Section 1401 of the applicable code. Now, what is Andy talking about? And again, does this mean that the president, as the chief executive officer of the United States, with a concern about who comes into the country, who does not come into the country, who's a citizenship and who doesn't get citizenship, that he doesn't have the right to do this? Explain the 1401 issue.
Well, the 1401 issue, Congress has a statute that defines citizenship, but it uses the exact same language as the Constitution. So we've got to figure out what the Constitution means. And like I said before, there are two requirements: born here and subject to the jurisdiction. Let me give an example. If a British citizen is over here as a tourist, he has to comply with our laws while he's here. He drives on the right side of the road, not the left side of the road. But he's not subject to our allegiance. He doesn't get drafted into our army. He's subject to the partial territorial jurisdiction, not the complete jurisdiction that was intended. And what the president is trying to do is just enforce that law as written. And I'll give you one very good example, and I think Andy will agree with me on this. You've got to be a citizen in order to get a passport. The one thing that everybody agrees with is that the subject to the jurisdiction clause at least excludes the children of diplomats who are here. And yet our passport office is unlawfully giving passports and deeming as citizens the children of diplomats who are clearly not covered by the 14th Amendment. So the president's executive order could, for example, just tell the passport office to quit violating the law. That would be well within his rights as the chief executive of the country.
Well, Chuck Grassley looks like he agreed with Paul Ryan today, which was a little disappointing for those of us who really like Chuck Grassley. I want to just go through a list of the countries, not that this matters because we have our own constitutional understanding, but that do not offer birthright citizenship. Most of the developed countries other than Canada: Australia, Austria, Denmark, France, Germany, Israel, Italy, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, Slovakia, South Korea, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, the UK. None of them offer this type of birthright citizenship, which, Andy, we're going to get into this in a moment. It does create perverse incentives. And this birth tourism issue, which we're going to get into deeply here, it's a huge problem. And we have horrible situations happening in New York and California where there are abuses and so forth. How do you think this ultimately comes down, Andy?
I think a lot of it depends on how it goes up to the Supreme Court, Laura. You're quite right. You know, look, when you hear people defend this, what they say is that this is absolutely what the 14th Amendment requires. They never say that this is good policy because it's indefensible policy. But I just think, having fought the old military commissions battle back, 10, 12 years ago, however long it was, there was a lot of authority that President Bush had to unilaterally order military commissions, and the court told him nevertheless that he needed Congress. And I just think, if this goes up to the Supreme Court as an executive order, we lose. If it goes up to the Supreme Court as a statute, at least there's a chance.
All right, John and Andy, thank you so much. Fascinating conversation. And now on to that story I was alluding to, a shocking one. As a result of something called birth tourism, a phenomenon where foreign nationals come to this country to just give birth with the explicit purpose of securing citizenship for their infant. Just in the last month, in a story that got very little attention, a worker at one of these host homes went on a gruesome attack, stabbing 2 adults and 3 infants, one as young as only 3 days old. This particular site was used primarily by Chinese citizens seeking to get that all-important U.S. passport for their infants. Joining me with more is Mark Krikorian, the executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, and Mingli Chen is an immigration lawyer in New York in the area where this birth center was broken up. Mingli, I want to start with you. This story got very little attention, and you point out that some of these birthing centers are properly registered and some are not. Explain that.
Well, from my experience dealing with my clients and talking to other customers, I learned that some of the maternity centers are registered, but they are primarily registered as a daycare. But in the back, they are doing something else. They are doing the maternity center providing some type of food service to the mothers who give birth to the infants. They are providing this and that service without telling the government, so that is against the registration.
Well, in this particular case, Mark Krikorian was just absolutely hideous. The New York Times and the New York Post did big stories on this at the time, still being litigated. The carnage happened around 3:40 a.m. in this 3-story home in Flushing, where workers provide care to babies born in the U.S. in exchange for thousands of dollars. One of the employees, identified as Yufeng Wan, went berserk, attacked a 63-year-old colleague, a 31-year-old man, and then stabbed 3 baby girls, a 3-day-old, a 2-week-old, and a 1-month-old. And women show up twice a week, pregnant, have their children there, all right under the nose of New York officials.
Yeah, but I mean, a lot of these operations are going to be like this, kind of sleazy, you know, I won't say black market, but they're not properly registered. And there are others that really are higher quality, but they cost a lot more. I mean, this seems to have been kind of a discount operation. In other words, if you really had a lot of money in China and you wanted to get a U.S. passport for your kid, there's higher end versions of this kind of thing. And it's not just Chinese. There are Russian birth tourism
Miami
centers.
Is a big destination for the Russians.
A lot of Turks come, Koreans, people from Mexico. This is a big business, and it's all legal. That's the problem. These people are not breaking our laws. We're the ones who have this setup of rules that lets people have a kid here. They wait for a month or 2 for the passport to come in, you know, in the mail, and then they leave. At least the children of illegal immigrants actually grow up here as Americans. These kids, they never grow up as Americans. They grow up in China. They grow up in Turkey.
And they want the passport. Again, reinforce this point. Why?
A couple of reasons. It depends on the people. One, it's kind of an escape hatch. It's like if things go bad in your country, and if you're in China or Turkey, you never know what's going to happen there. It's a way to get out, or at least get the kid out. I mean, look, the last helicopter off the embassy, you're a lot more likely to have your kid on it if he's got a passport. Also, when the kid is an adult, he gets to sponsor you for immigration. So it's kind of almost a retirement program for some people. And finally, it's a way of getting cheaper tuition. If you want to go to, say, University of California, Berkeley, foreign students have to pay more than U.S. citizens. So it's an easier way of getting into college. And then finally, for some people, it's a way of dodging the draft. If you're in Turkey, you don't want to serve in the Turkish army. I wouldn't. This is a way to, you send your kid here.
How do our framers did not? This was not what our framers intended. Mingli, I want to go to you. Is China cool with this? I mean, you work with a lot of immigrants from China, or people come here as tourists, and they do this birth tourism. But is China okay with this? Not a problem?
China doesn't care. They don't care if somebody is coming out of the country going to the United States to give birth to the baby. They just care whether that person or any person like that in a situation will do something bad to the government. Otherwise, giving a birth to a baby has nothing to do with the Chinese policy.
And when you go to China, Mingli, you can just anyone who can go to China and you'll get Chinese citizenship, right? That's the way it works there?
Well, the China, as far as I understand, the Chinese policy is not. So,
yeah.
Is not.
Yeah, of course you can. They have a little different system there, which is fine. But I mean, they probably want to control their immigration and their citizenship a little differently. Mark and Mingli, thank you so much. And for more on why Trump won and how the GOP could do it again, grab a copy of my new paperback, Busting the Barricades, What I Saw at the Populist Revolt. You'll love it. It's in bookstores everywhere. And coming up, As the media busies itself with Trump's birthright citizenship ban, a new migrant caravan is actually storming into Mexico from Guatemala. The head of the Guatemalan Secretary of Strategic Intelligence is here with some inside info about who's behind these new efforts. Stay there. A new migrant caravan is storming violently toward our border. Mexican authorities telling the Associated Press that the migrants, quote, attacked its agents with rocks, glass bottles, and fireworks, with some allegedly carrying guns and even firebombs. And as these mobile mobs barrel toward our border, we're learning more about who is actually inside the first caravan. Check out this interview Griff Jenkins conducted with one of the Honduran migrants in the original group.
Are you willing to break the law to get back to the United States?
Yo quiero entrar y pedir un perdón.
He says he wants to apply for pardon for the felony he committed.
Can you ask him exactly what happened?
¿Cuál es tu felonía exactamente?
Number 3.
A third-degree felony?
Intento de matar.
Attempt of murder.
My Spanish isn't great, but I understood that. Now, Fox News reporter William Longinus stayed up for us and joins us on the ground in Oaxaca, Mexico, with a live report. William, thank you for staying up. You worked such a long day. Tell us what we need to know.
That's okay, Laura. Well, I'll tell you that the migrants that we've spoken to know there are criminals among them. That's why they kind of hang out in groups of 5, 10, or 15 to watch each other. So you'll sleep, I'll watch your stuff. Now, we have interviewed so far 2 gang members, one from L.A., one from Houston, a human trafficker and a drug trafficker from North Carolina who said he can't go back because he will be, quote, killed. So it's not uncommon, the Border Patrol tells me, in these large groups they're seeing down on the southwest border right now, 100, 200, sometimes 300 people, for there to be criminal aliens among them. That's not uncommon. And we also have been told by a law enforcement source that Mexico is being very cooperative in providing intel to the U.S. that indeed there are people here that have criminal records. In fact, that is why President Trump, when he says there are bad guys here, he's not wrong.
I don't want to cross the border and running from the Border Patrol and all this stuff. No, I just want to be legal and safe.
I heard that he said that most of us that are going in the caravan, we're gangsters, you know, and all that stuff. So, not all of us, but you know, there's some people that going here that it's true. They're bad persons.
So that first guy you heard from, he was the human trafficker who got arrested in Texas with 3 illegal aliens in the trunk. So here are the stats from the Border Patrol. 2016, almost 13,000 criminal aliens arrested. It's gone down since then, but that August figure is, or that 2018 figure is only through August. The offenses range from murder to sexual assault, the largest criminal reentry, followed by DUI, domestic violence and assault, burglary and theft. So at this point in time, the U.S. is doing, what it can. It knows there's going to be people there, which of course is why one of the reasons President Trump is doing what he did. Laura, I just want to say that, a lot of the people here, they're uninformed about what to expect in the United States. For the first time yesterday, we saw a U.S. immigration lawyer down here who works with migrant groups telling them how to pass a credible, fair interview, how to say, I was threatened, who are you threatened by, what's the relationship, what did you tell police, why couldn't you go to the police, those kinds of things. So those are the things that Sin Fronteras did with the last caravan in March and April in terms of telling these people how to make it into the country. We'll have to see with the changes the president's making whether that's possible or not. Back to you.
William, just one question. How are they moving from point A to point B? We see all this video of various flatbed trucks. Are they just random people who are like, come on aboard and I'll give you a ride? I mean, how's that working?
Yeah, yes, it is. It started out walking, right, on last Sunday, 10 days ago, whatever. And then they started hitchhiking, and then different towns have heard about them, of course, getting publicity down here. So you're right. Buses, trucks, cabs, vans like this one, they'll each pay like $1.50 to go from one town to the next, sometimes 40, 50 miles. Tomorrow they're going to stay here, and they're trying to get transportation, 150 buses to take them to Mexico City, where they'll talk to the government about their demands. Back to you.
That's a lot of money to pay for 150 buses. Thank you, William, so much for being here tonight. And so why do these caravans keep coming? Joining us now from Guatemala City is a Guatemalan Secretary of Strategic Intelligence, Mario Duarte. Mario, we heard from some officials in your country that there are certain organizations funding these caravans. What can you tell us about them?
Okay, so before we start, Laura, I wanted to wish you a happy anniversary on your great show on behalf of President Jimmy Morales. We're great fans down here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Back to your question. As you might have heard from President Juan Orlando Hernandez from Honduras, he spoke with Vice President Pence. They have detected some NGOs and some groups, leftist groups, funding this caravan with funds from leftist countries in Latin America. We're working together with them to find out what's going on, who other organizations might be helping them, and obviously we're sharing all this information with American intelligence and American security agencies.
Mr. Secretary, from folks in the United States wonder, why can't Guatemalans fix what ails Guatemala? I mean, I've been to Guatemala many times. I have a beautiful daughter who was born in Guatemala. It's one of the most beautiful countries, natural resources, just natural beauty and incredible people. But obviously a long history of difficulty and corruption and concern. So how do you deal with that? I mean, that is a big problem. I mean, a lot of these people are from Honduras, but before that, a lot of Guatemalans were mixed in as well.
Well, we have detected, yes, some Guatemalans, but as you said, most of them are from Honduras. Now, yes, Guatemala is a great country. We have great resources. Unfortunately, through our history, we have had several difficulties, problems with different ideologies. We had a 36-year internal conflict, and we had to work through that with our citizens and get out of all that situation. We've been working on that very hard. President Jimmy Morales' administration has been putting a lot of emphasis on building up our institutions, building up our capabilities, and obviously working with our partners like the United States and other countries.
And Mr. Secretary, your country was not able to hold back that initial caravan, nor was it able to hold back the second caravan that's making its way through Mexico now, nor could Mexico. Why couldn't you hold them back? And what was your sense about the people in this caravan? Are they all just good people who just want a job? Are there bad people mixed in? Is President Trump right about that?
Well, we're looking at different situations here, Laura. Central American countries, we have this agreement since 2006 or 2008 that our citizens can freely move between the countries as long as they carry their national ID and go through a regular immigration process or border checkpoint. Now, this caravan, as you might have seen in from different videos, it was a very, very big group, over 3,000 people. And when the Guatemalan security forces, let me state that really quickly, we put over 2,000 police officers and close to 1,000 military.
Yeah, but you couldn't hold them back. We're almost out of time. You couldn't hold them back, though, Mr. Secretary.
To support this.
Yeah, but you couldn't stop it.
Yeah, there was an issue here. Well, we tried very hard, as you could have seen in the videos. Yeah. The issue is that these people put babies, women, and the elderly at the front, almost like human shields. So when they started pressing them against our security personnel, we had do all our best to protect their lives, to protect their human rights, and protect their dignity as well. With that in there, we always put life first, and we had to protect these people. And obviously, that's when the rest of the caravan overpassed our security forces.
Mr. Secretary, we really appreciate it. We hope you continue to work with the United States government. These caravans, it's got to stop. I mean, it's untenable. It's unsustainable. The people in this country want orderly immigration. I'm sure it's no great shakes for you trying to deal with it there as well. So thank you very much for joining us tonight, and we'll check back with you soon. The rabbi of the Tree of Life Synagogue, believe it or not, on another issue, is receiving hate mail. For what? For welcoming the president's visit to Pittsburgh. Well, ahead, we examine how those who claim to be opposed to hate may actually be stoking it. Stay there.
I first said that the president was welcome. I've received a lot of email too numerous to count. The thing that saddens me is those emails also contain hate. And it just continues in this vicious cycle. Hate, promulgating more hate, promulgating more hate. And that's just not the solution.
Now, that was Rabbi Myers of Pittsburgh's Tree of Life Synagogue. Now, like the rabbi's correspondence, the media self-righteously claiming to be fighting against hate and anti-Semitism and so forth. But the only thing they seem fixated on is fighting the president.
It's really unusual for a sitting president to head to the scene of a tragedy like this and not be in the company of other elected officials. It just goes to show how controversial this last week has been, really, when it comes to this conversation about the president's rhetoric.
I spoke to somebody in Trump world this morning saying, why is he going? And the response was, he does care. He's just not any good at it.
He does not lean into unity and hope and that message. It doesn't come naturally to him.
Joining me to react to all of this is Dave Bossie, Fox News contributor, co-author of Trump's Enemies, and Chris Hahn, former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. David, let's start with you. Why is a visit to pay respects to the victims of this horrific anti-Semitic slaughter over the weekend controversial?
It's simply not controversial. It's only the ones with Trump derangement syndrome that want to make it so. They hate this president more than they love the country. I've been saying it a long time, and it's unfortunate. And it's in this time. And I think that Chris will agree with me. We all have a responsibility to try to ratchet down the partisanship, not ratchet it up. The president, as all presidents do, went to a scene of a tragedy to try and pay his respects with the First Lady, with his son-in-law who's Jewish, with his daughter who is Jewish, to pay respects to those fallen, those first responders that were incredibly brave going after the shooter, and their families. That's what presidents do. And that's what should happen, and we should all take a moment just to take a deep breath, not hyperbolic
CNN was doing this whole deal, Chris Hahn, on the so-called, the 2,000 protesters, some of them organized. The Daily Mail has a big, long piece on it tonight by the Democrats for Socialist America and other left-wing groups and so forth. That's fine. They can protest the president. But this is what Anna Navarro said earlier today, and I'll have you react.
The reason he's being faulted is because everything he has said beforehand and everything he has said since makes this act seem like he's checking off a box and just rings hollow.
Chris, is the president checking off a box?
I don't know what's in the president's heart, Laura. I think every president should visit scenes like this. I know the city was concerned about security and resources to protect the funerals and other people because they're worried about a copycat. So whether or not he should have been there or not will be debated. I think that'll pass very shortly. What needs to be done by the president, and I agree with Mr. Bossie, is we need to ratchet down the rhetoric in this country. The president needs to choose his words more carefully. He cannot be saying that he is a nationalist. I am the grandson of people who were chased out of Europe by nationalists and the great-grandson of people who were murdered in concentration camps by nationalists. So there are better words to use for love of your country, like patriot or just love of my country. But using that word has really set a tone that many in this country have their back up and are angered by the president. I think the president should choose his words more carefully and try to unite the nation, especially when the election's going to be over a week from tonight, Laura. And I hope that the day after the election, the president of the United States looks into the camera and says it's time for this nation to have a healing.
Is that, Chris, is that what Nancy Pelosi is planning to do? I mean, I take what you say, and I know you feel it in your heart, and I respect that.
I do.
But the idea that in a midterm election, the president should just kind of sit there and say, well, this is my view on immigration, this is the chart we have here, and this is the GDP, and this is what... Come on.
Maybe
I mean, the left, the idea that he can't argue this stuff at this point because we've had horrific tragedies is very convenient for the left. Go ahead.
But Chris, I just want to say...
No, Laura, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Well, that's what the left is saying. They want to silence his president.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
They want to silence the president.
I think the president could run on his accomplishments and make a comparison to his opponents, but he's got to ratchet down the hateful rhetoric, calling himself a nationalist, saying that his hair was messed up in the rain when he was answering questions about this tragedy.
Read Yoram Hazany's book on nationalism. He's a renowned Jewish scholar. His view on nationalism is very different from yours, as are many others who are not fans of Trump.
My great-grandfather was killed by a nationalist, murdered by a nationalist in a concentration
those are
camp.
socialist. Those are also socialists. Go ahead.
Chris, I just want to say the president's heart is filled with love for all the American people. And I just got to say this. His grandchildren are Jewish. This is something that's very close to home to him. So I know the left wants to hate on him, and I know that they want to argue with everything. But can they just not give him one moment to pay respects to the 11 that died in Pittsburgh? That's what America historically has always done, and I think we need to just check ourselves and do that some more.
Again, I'm not faulting him for going there, but like I said, there are other words. That word has been taken, and there are people in this country who know what nationalists mean, and they might think it's different from what the president means.
No, but the president.
There are people in this country who, when they hear
shouting
nationalists,
doesn't make it any better.
White nationalists.
Shouting doesn't make it any better. I mean, I get it, but we have freaks in all walks of life and all over this country who listen to this snippet on CNN or this snippet here. And we could take this and extrapolate it out till the cows come home.
The president is a patriot.
But he wants the best for the country. I think the Democrats want the best for the country. But you can't demonize every word that comes out of someone's mouth because he's beating people on some of these issues. That's what I have a problem with. I don't want to circumscribe more speech in the country.
Stop using that word, Laura.
All right, guys,
stop using that word.
Okay.
There are others.
If he does that, I'm sure, Chris, you're going to be all on Trump's camp. All right. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate it. It's an important day today. The speech police, though, are back again, as I referenced, and the stronger they are this time.
Listen, I think nationalism is a dog whistle for white nationalism.
That's just what Chris Hahn said. Monica Crowley is here next to explain how this dangerous trend of speech codes from college campuses foisted on society at large is something we all need to think a little bit about. Don't go away.
When he's in the biggest trouble, the biggest dog whistle he blows is the immigration dog whistle.
This other guy is a stone cold. In my opinion, he's a thief. Look at the job he's done as the mayor of Tallahassee. He's a total disaster.
Look, that is a racial dog whistle, pure and simple.
How do you call cats? It's always the dog whistles. Come on, we got to have new phrases here to really trash the president. Joining me now from New York City is Washington Times senior opinion columnist Monica Crowley. Monica, what's the end goal for the left here?
Well, you know, Laura, this is George Orwell's dire warning coming to pass, and that's not an overstatement. The founders made the amendment protecting free speech, the first one, for a reason. You cannot have a truly free society if free speech is infringed or circumscribed, either by the government, which is what the First Amendment was designed to guard against, or by these roving mobs of leftists that control the media and the narrative. They use fear, intimidation, extortion, blacklisting, boycotts, and so many other manipulative ways as hammers against anybody whose speech they disapprove of. It is a form of totalitarianism. We are well down this road, and if we don't watch out, we're going to end up like Europe, where free speech is essentially out the window.
And Monica, it always ends up boiling over. They tried to do this with even the issue of abortion. The Supreme Court comes in, finds a right in the Constitution that's not there. Roe versus Wade. 45 years later, we're still debating Roe versus Wade. You still have hundreds of thousands of people. They tried to kind of say, oh, no, this is just a choice. Everyone's like, no, that's your euphemistic language doesn't work with me. And the debate continues. So you can't take issues off the table. The Supreme Court really couldn't do it with Roe. And I think the college campus censorious folks out there who are trying to foist this on society at large, I don't think it works. I think they just end up breeding more resentment.
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to turn the entire country into the college campus. And what they're essentially doing by using all of these instruments of intimidation and extortion and boycotts and so on is enforce speech codes. And they've really had enormous success so far, unfortunately, in marginalizing, if not outright silencing people. I was at the store the other day, and the cashier recognized me, and she said, Monica, you know what? I keep my mouth closed. I'd rather not say anything than get into trouble with my boss or lose my job. That is a victory against the First Amendment, and that's very dangerous for the future of the country.
Well, and we see it in the military. We see it in big corporations. And people are afraid to speak out. They're afraid to speak their mind. That's a terrible thing in this country. Long you do it respectfully, but speak your mind. Monica, thank you so much. And folks, we're celebrating an anniversary tonight. Our own. Oh my gosh, the Ingraham Angle turned 1 today. And well, isn't the program still adorable? Ahead, we're going to celebrate the big one-on-ones from the past year.